And how you doing? This is Ben Fisher with Stay Demand, and I am at MIVA Conference 2014. I've got a very special guest next to me, and for all you science lovers out there, which on Google Plus, there's a ton of you. Um, this man is a pioneer, I would have to say, and he is the director of the Hubble Space Project, the Hubble Telescope Deep Field Space Project. And we just got done watching an excellent presentation about extraterrestrial life and exploring planets that are pretty much within our own solar system, right? And so what we're going to do is I would like to let the nice doctor tell us a little bit more about science and really why we should be paying much more attention to science, even though we pay attention now.
Well, pleased to talk with you, Ben. Certainly I've enjoyed giving the talks here. It's been an enthusiastic audience. Sciences generally are divided up into two types, pure or applied sciences. Applied sciences obviously undertake things that improve society. Pure science exists pretty much to satisfy a human's curiosity. Astronomy is perhaps the purest of sciences. Like music, you can live without it. You don't need it for your daily life. And for that reason, it is important that the results of astronomy, this pure science, be put before the public. I feel that very strongly. And frequently we are asked, so in a world in which there is hunger, why study astronomy? Why devote funds to astronomy when it could those funds could be used to improve mankind, let's say? And my answer is that if you define an ideal society to be one in which everyone has food, clothing, shelter, roof over your head, basic medical care, in fact, such societies exist. Where are they? Your local prison or jail. Each inmate has food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Not the greatest. And so when the doors are open, do people rush to get into that ideal society, or do they rush to get out? And we know what the answer is. They rush to get out. Why? Because as important as these necessities are, the fact that you are not free to follow your desire, so to speak, is even more important than having food on the table. And astronomy is that. There is an inborn curiosity, I think, in all of us to address these questions of what's our relationship with the global environment? How did we get here? To what extent has the universe evolved in such a way that life has sprung forward? And I think that it is, and I think that it is something that is fundamental. So I think that public outreach for astronomy is something that is really crucial, and I feel that very strongly. In any organization that I'm a part of, I do what I can to disseminate the results of astronomy to the public.
So that being said, I mean, and that's a mouthful all in itself. Thank you. I mean, that was actually really awesome and deep coming from a man of science, which I think you probably think much deeper than most of us. And
not sure about that, but I'll accept the plaudits.
But so, I mean, just out of curiosity, I mean, you did say that you were interested in astronomy when you were yay high, right? So what brought you to the path of working with the Hubble Telescope?
It was a long path, but it was one that has actually not changed. Okay, so I grew up in Southern California, And when I was in junior high school, which is now what they call middle level school, I was 12 years old. The state of California mandated that every student should have one semester of science. So in my junior high school, Ontario, California, where I grew up, there was this course. Mr. Jones was our teacher, and we spent 2 weeks studying various sciences, physics, botany, zoology, paleontology, chemistry, astronomy. Astronomy. I knew nothing about it. I was interested in sports, played basketball and baseball. But I was a nerd, a bookworm, so I'd always read ahead. And so I started reading the little booklet that was put out by Time Life about astronomy. And it went through astronomy in the classic way, in the sense that you start with telescopes and then you start working your way out through the universe. You start with the sun, then the solar system, the planets, stars, and galaxies. And so while we were still actually studying another unit, we'd gotten this little booklet, and I was reading ahead, and I was reading about telescopes. Now, I knew something about them because every morning when I walked to school, there was this war surplus store that had a telescope out. And Ontario is sort of at the base of Mount Baldy, and they always had the telescope pointed at Mount Baldy. And so whenever it was a clear day, we'd stop on the way to school. I'd look through the telescope, and I always thought that was cool. Okay, didn't know it had an astronomical use. But then I started reading about telescopes and astronomy, and in particular the study of the planets. And I remember seeing a picture that was taken with a telescope, one of the large ones at that time, which was the Yerkes refractor, 40-inch. And it was a little picture about yay big of Mars. And you could see the polar caps, and you could see differences in coloration on the surface. And reading about it, it mentioned that there had been some speculation that maybe there were canals on Mars, that Percival Lowell had taken an interest in, and the Italian astronomer Schiaparelli, and I was blown away. I didn't know there were other planets than Earth, and that maybe some of them had conditions in which they could harbor life. That was it. It was to me an experience that changed my life.
Question of, are we truly alone in the universe?
So it was a question of, are we alone? But even more than that, to me it was, what is this? What are these other planets, and what can I learn from them? So I had an innate curiosity, and that's all. I used to bug my parents because I'm one of 5 kids, and I was always the one who was asking questions. In any event, so I went home that night and got a magnifying glass out of my mother's sewing kit, took it to school the next day because I wanted to see what Mars looked like close up. Well, of course, what happened? I saw a bunch of resolved dots, and that's it. The fact is, I was blown away by astronomy. From that day onward, I wanted to be an astronomer. I was 12 years old. Never has there been a day in my life where I changed that. Went to Berkeley, studied astronomy, majored in astronomy. All of my friends that I happened to associate with there were in physics. Some of them dropped out, went into poli-sci, went into biology. Not me. I was an astronomer. In fact, it's even in the high school yearbook, Bob Williams wants to be an astronomer. Now I'm almost 74 years old. I'm still an astronomer. They're going to bury me basically with an interest in astronomy. Have never changed. And it was this requirement in the state of California that we study science that actually got me going on it, because I had this incipient desire that I didn't know about, this curiosity. And it's probably a little different than most people. I've met very few who really somehow were totally captivated by it and never changed. I can tell you, even though now I have a great interest in helping other people, and particularly working in the world of autism, because that's been my wife's life's work. The fact is, pursuit of astronomy has been one of the driving forces in my life every day since I was 12 years old.
And I mean, that speaks to not only passion and dedication, but I mean, that's a laser focus because the type of things that you had to make happen to actually get to where you've come don't normally happen unless you're in the right circumstance at the right time, meeting the right people.
So I'm frequently asked, forgive me for grabbing the microphone. So how is, what's the secret? I'm interested in this, and I do speak with lots of classes. In fact, I've just been invited to give the baccalaureate talk in my former high school in Ontario this year. What's the key? And my answer is that it is not the level of intelligence that really is the key factor in determining whether or not you can be successful in science. Most of the people I've talked to who have, say, gone to college have the intelligence to succeed at it. That's not the key. The key is maintaining the focus, the desire of you knowing what you want to do and sticking with it. Nothing wrong with changing your mind and getting interested in something else. In my case, it didn't happen, really. So what is it, 60 years on now? Hey, Elton John song. I have, had astronomy maintained as one of the great driving forces of my life. For whatever reason, I'm hardwired that way. I wouldn't advocate that for other people other than whatever it is that turns you on at the time. Stay focused and go for it. But it is not necessarily level of intelligence. A lot of people are scared off by mathematics, learning about logarithms or whatever, integral calculus, differential equations. Most people I talk to, you can master that, and so it is simply having the confidence and self-esteem to trust your judgment when you decide you want to do something, and sticking with it. That's important.
And I really think that's a core thing that we can all relate to. A lot of people do have problems when they have something that they want to do and they stop themselves.
Discipline.
Exactly.
Discipline.
So
very important.
If you love something, if you have a passion for it, go for it. Speaking about going for it, so when we're talking about spreading the word about science, and if people like people that are on Google Plus, for instance, have an extreme passion for astronomy, science, NASA, everything that has to do with science. So what can somebody of no influence or even with influence, what can they do to kind of help spread the word, spread the message about science, and and share that passion with other people?
Do not tolerate superstition. That's my answer. I believe science is two things. It is discovery and it is a way of thinking. Now, discovery is straightforward. You're looking at something, trying to understand it, and you realize, oh, that's the way it is, and no one else has appreciated that. So you communicate that. Now, that doesn't happen every day, but the process of discovery is a straightforward one. It is the way of thinking and determining what you accept as fact or as possibility and what you do not. So we all have this tendency to attribute unknown phenomena to various things, which is why the Greeks believed in gods. When they encountered a phenomenon they couldn't understand, they simply attributed it to the deity. And so where do you place a deity? Well, you can't put your hands on them, and so in the case of the Greeks, you put them on a high mountain. Right. So after... that's right. And so when we start scaling high mountains, then you move them out into to space. Now, I have nothing against that because, in fact, there may be deity out in space. But as a scientist, we are trained to be skeptics. That is, it may be easy to attribute some phenomena, as the ancients did to thunder and lightning, to angels, right? I mean, this is so science is influenced by what is called Occam's razor, in the sense that when you try to explain an unknown phenomenon, you should minimize the number of ad hoc hypotheses that you make. That came about because at the time of William of Occam, which is around the 1300s, it was believed that it was known that thunder and lightning were associated. And so lightning, of course, was this flash that you could see, and thunder always followed it. It was believed in the knowledgeable circles, which at that time were clerical because much of the book learning was done in convents, and that thunder was produced by angels flapping their wings when this celestial phenomenon, lightning, occurred. William of Occam disagreed with that and said, this is an ad hoc hypothesis. Yes, it may be that angels are producing it, but he actually thought that it was probably a natural phenomenon that had not been understood. So my statement is, I believe that in trying to understand the physical world, you should not rely on ad hoc hypotheses. Read that superstition. This, to me, is the most important thing that science can convey, and people who like science can convey to the general public. Be very careful of making assumptions that invoke ad hoc hypotheses. In other words, be skeptical. Look for the data that will help you understand phenomena, and be critical in your assessment of that. That, to me, is something that's very important in science, because I would advocate that human prejudice basically derives from superstition, unsubstantiated facts, and if there is any role that science can play in the improvement of humanity, it is exactly that. It is trying to eradicate superstition and prejudice that is not based on fact. That's my answer to your question.
That is a fantastic answer, is what that is. That's a brilliant answer. I'm sorry. I'm got to say it. I mean, it's very true. I mean, and we even in marketing, we try to be as analytical as possible. We try to be objective as possible to disprove theories. For instance, maybe a sale was occurred because of this reason. Well, it might be. Correct. But how do you know that? You don't know that.
Right.
I don't know what's going on in your head when you buy something.
So be careful in believing in unsubstantiated fact.
All right. So I have one last question for you, and that is this: when you were up on stage, you said you believe that there's no extraterrestrial life.
No, actually, I said the opposite.
Okay, I thought. Okay,
I believe in the inevitability, in the assurance of life elsewhere. It is the question of what attributes it has, and what I do not believe in is the likelihood of intelligent life as we know it, in which there is consciousness and self-awareness. I believe, and I drew the analogy with the snowflakes, in the same sense that when snow precipitates, all the flakes form under the same thermodynamic conditions, pretty much same temperature and density, and yet there are microscopic processes that cause each one of those flakes to have a different geometry. Now, what causes that? Well, I don't know that we understand that fully, but I believe that life is no doubt like that, that I suspect that, given the jillions of planets that must exist around the jillions of stars in the jillions of galaxies, that life exists. No evidence for it yet, none, right, but I believe it. But I think it very unlikely that there happens to be a life form like humans with the complicated brains and the complexity that makes us conscious and self-aware. Well, it was and so I draw the analogy. I suspect that if life is going to ever be discovered or realized anywhere, it is likely to be in a much simpler form. And I like to use terrestrial nematodes as my archetype for it. And I suspect there could be something like single-celled species, or shall we say nematodes elsewhere. But if I had to bet, I'm not a betting man, I would bet against conscious humanoids.
I mean, upon the jillions and jillions and jillions of planets that are out there, and all the jillions of possibilities, all of the things that have to come together at that perfect moment in time to even create a protein, to create something like life in general. Out of all those possibilities, then you also have to have the possibilities of the planetary conditions.
Exactly. So many other things that we don't understand, and so you're going to get different life forms. But again, just my sense is, and I could be wrong, and usually am, I would bet against conscious humanoids with our complexity.
Right on.
Just my thinking. Enjoyed talking with you, Ben.
Absolutely.
A pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking your time. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great.
That's a wrap.